Welcome to day 28 of 40 Days of Strangers on the Way. I love interactions with Uber drivers, taxi drivers, Lyft drivers, and I have another one for you today. Welcome to Meeting Kiara, a divine setup. Can I get a lift? The Lord directs the steps of the godly. He delights in every detail of their lives. Though they stumble, they will never fall, for the Lord holds them by the hand. Psalm 37, verses 23 and 24. One winter night, I ventured into the city fighting Chicago Bears versus Green Bay Packers traffic to celebrate the newest book release of one of my favorite authors. I arrived just 10 minutes before the start of the event, scored second row seats, and settled in. God, can you please show up tonight? I silently prayed. I had spent 7 of the last 31 days of the month actually home. The rest of the whirlwind 24 days, I traveled the globe. The trips were incredible and the people I met were even more incredible, but I crash landed into home, weary and jet lagged. The excitement and allure and passion from the previous weeks gave way to fatigue as I began to settle back into regular life. God, I feel like I'm forgetting who you are, I prayed that morning. How could this be? I just witnessed you all over the place, moving in miraculous ways. How can I so easily forget? That previous month, I met people from Australia and the United Kingdom and Scotland and California and Iran. Beautiful people with powerful stories. I filled out pages and pages of journal entries about how I saw God moving and what people's lives taught me. But then I came home and it was all a blur. God, can you help me remember? Nestled in my auditorium seat, the author walked out and began greeting guests. A few minutes later, the author and a therapist began answering questions about depression, anxiety, and purpose. As the conversation continued, the therapist said, "Wait, I just had to mention, my Lyft driver is here tonight." She pointed with excitement as we all looked toward the back of the room. It was a total God moment. I was freaking out because the books hadn't arrived for tonight, but my driver said, "No, this is a divine appointment." The books did end up arriving, and the therapist was filled with encouragement. A little love from her Lyft driver, who ended up buying a ticket to come to the event that evening. Later in the night, the author shared relevant wisdom from the book of Ruth. Ruth and Naomi had lost their husbands and their livelihood. Naomi decided to go back to her hometown in Bethlehem, and Ruth decided to go with her. Throughout the book, there were rich examples of grieving well, going after what you want, and how endings can actually become beginnings. At the end of her talk, the author invited people who may have wandered away from Jesus or never started a relationship with him to start one. She shared a beautiful invitation and then invited people to raise their hands. After a moment of silence, the author said, "Thank you," and acknowledged someone who had raised her hand behind me. I turned around to look. It was the Lyft driver. The Lyft driver who just happened to pick up the event coordinator, who just happened to have a book delivery crisis, just happened to talk about an event happening that night, and this Lyft driver just happened to come to that event. And at that event, this Lyft driver just happened to hear about Jesus, who just happened to be orchestrating details to place her in a room where she could hear about how much he loves her. This is what I affectionately like to call the divine setup. God is always moving, always working, always placing treasures around us to show us his love. You are so loved. Maybe today all you see are clouds. Maybe the fog is thick. Maybe you've been feeling stuck. Maybe you wake up most days discouraged. Maybe you're exhausted. Maybe you can't see what's ahead. But behind those clouds, behind that fog, God is moving mountains. He is putting things in place that you cannot see. You can trust him. Pour your heart out to him and lean in close because he's right there. He's so close and he's so good and his love is right there. You may just be at the side of the road waiting for your Lyft driver to pick you up. Let's wonder, in what ways have you seen God's divine setup in your own life? And then let's activate. Take 3 deep breaths. Open your Bible, or you can download the Bible app for free on your phone, and invite God to speak to your heart today. Invite God to read the Bible with you and write down words and phrases that resonate with you. Open your Bible today and invite God to speak to your heart. Invite God to read the Bible with you and write down words and phrases that resonate with you. And then let's yield. Take one of the Bible verses that stood out to you, or a phrase or a word, and turn it into a prayer to God. Write it down and then speak it aloud. Take one of the Bible verses that stood out to you and turn it into a prayer to God. Write it below and then speak it out loud.